couple announcements. So I thank you all for coming. I try to mention everybody, if you're not part of the Lansing Code Slack, that's a great place to go. Join up so you can hear about all the different meetups going on, hear different announcements. Next month, so first Tuesday of every month is the DevOps meetup. Next month we've got a guy, Crispin, he's going to be talking about accessibility testing. It'll be, if you're any sort of public-facing company and have any user accessibility concerns, it'll be a great talk to come to. Also want to mention, if anybody is going to the Orchestructure workshop that's going on this weekend, if you have any questions about the schedule, there is the workshop webpage that's got the schedule that's correct. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're interested, come talk to me later and I can make sure you understand what's going on. And also if you RSVP'd that you're going to go but you can't, just go ahead and update that if you would. And then the other thing that I need to do is thank our food sponsor, which is A2 Hosting. And A2 Hosting is a hosting company based out of Ann Arbor. And I'm stalling as I try to find my message that has that. Come on. Okay. There we go. So A2 Hosting is a web hosting company based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, with data centers across the globe. At A2, they specialize in performance-based hosting for everyone, with a proactive service team working around the clock. Whether you've never run a website before or are a professional developer, rest assured, they have a web hosting solution to meet your unique needs. So we definitely are thankful for A2 Hosting. They pick up the bill for our pizza and food and everything every month, and that's been a great benefit to our meetup. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lisa Crispin, who's going to be our speaker tonight.
Great, well thanks so much for having me. I wish I could be there in person, but it's really nice to be able to do these remote things as well. So I'm going to talk about the whole team approach to testing and DevOps. And it sounds like y'all are a pretty experienced group, so I'm looking forward to this. Okay, come on, slides. Why don't you want to go forward? There we go. So just a little bit about me. I'm a testing advocate at Maple. See, I've got my Maple 404 AF shirt on. And we're a automated test tool product. Most of the UI testing started moving to API testing and a lot of other cool stuff. And over the past couple of decades, I've been a hands-on tester on agile teams. Before that, I was testers on less agile teams. And before that, I was a programmer. So I've done a lot of different things over the years. And Janet Gregory and I have co-written a couple of books and an online video course, as well as a 3-day live training course that we offer through the Agile Testing Fellowship. And when I'm not working, and when my leg is not recovering from being broken, I'm not playing with my 3 donkeys. They all drive and do work, and we have a lot of fun together. So what I'd like to cover today is just talking about how to engage the whole team in a DevOps culture, because it kind of is all about building a quality culture. And I'm going to share some tools and some activities that help to shorten feedback loops and mitigate risks. With our pipelines, those are feedback loops, and how do we make those fast? And now that we have this continuous delivery world, how do we fit all that continuous testing in? And then a few things about why automated tests are so important. Oops, this is so weird. PowerPoint is not my friend. So, working on agile teams for the past 20 years, like I said, what I found is really important is to get the whole team together, everybody on the team, no matter what their role is, and decide what level of quality we can commit to. And in Agile, we focus on trying to prevent bugs over finding them after the fact, but great modern tools that we can use for metrics and alerting and monitoring and observability, we can also find errors in production and fix them fast. So it's a combination. We want to focus on what's valuable to our customers and make sure we really understand that. So we have that continuous loop of we build a feature, we get it out to production, we learn how the customers use it, whether it might be useful, and then maybe we're going to iterate and add on to that feature or just get rid of it because nobody liked it. And having everybody on the team, testers, analysts, designers, database experts, operations experts, whoever it is, it just makes sure that we have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different skill sets, different experience, and hopefully we have different unconscious biases so that we don't have all the same ones, and we can apply that to make sure we can make our customers happy. So I don't think I said, but feel free to jump in at any time with questions, or if something I say kind of inspires you to say, oh, we had a problem like that, or I have a story like that, just feel free to jump in, because this is informal, and I normally do interactive hands-on workshops, so doing talks, just hearing myself talk is not that fun. So feel free to jump in at any time. So some of you might, is anybody here familiar with the agile testing quadrants? I can't see very well in that tiny picture, but maybe not. So this is a taxonomy of tests that Brian Barrett came up with back in 2003, and Janet Gregory and I have used it a lot in our work, and pretty popular among a lot of agile teams. And it's just a way to help you think about all the different kinds of tests you need to do. And so we have tests that are business facing, so things that reflect the quality that customers want in the product. And we have tests that are technology facing, reflecting things like reliability and performance that are important to us as a delivery team. We have tests that guide development, like doing test-driven development, behavior-driven development, things that help us know what to code. And then on the other side, we have tests that critique the product after it has been coded. And that might be user acceptance testing, or it might be maybe we do performance testing after the code is written, or security testing, whatever it is. So DevOps really crosses over all four of those quadrants. Not that there are any hard and fast rules for all quadrants, but when we talk about DevOps, we really have to think about that big picture of all those types of testing. And this is a diagram that Janet and I use in our book, More Agile Testing. We have a chapter on DevOps. And this is how we see DevOps. There are a lot of good diagrams early on with DevOps that have dev, test, and ops. We think the business belongs in there too. And the testing really is the heart of it. And we call it DevOps. A lot of you heard DevSecOps and DevTestOps and DevQAOps and a lot of different acronyms for it. I don't mind having a short name for it, but we have to remember that everybody needs to be involved for it to work. So let's talk about what's in your continuous delivery pipeline. So I'm going to assume, because this is a DevOps group, that you all already know what continuous delivery is and what a pipeline is. Does anyone need me to explain what that is? You probably know more about it than I do.
I think we're good.
All right. So this is just an example of a continuous delivery pipeline. And one of the things I learned in the last couple of years from some expert practitioners is that the manual things we do that need to be done before we can release a feature or release a change, those are part of our pipeline. I wasn't really thinking of them that way. I was always thinking of the pipeline as continuous integration and running these automated test suites and automated deploys. But you know, the manual stuff is there too, and it's often a bottleneck. So we really have to think about it and plan for it. And then continuous deployment. In this case, we're going to automatically deploy to production every time somebody commits a change and all the tests are successful. So now we have these manual steps that are obviously can be part of the pipeline. What happens to those? And that's something where, again, if you've got to have people with a lot of different skills. You've got to have testers talking about that. You've got to have database people talking about test data, whatever it is. You have to plan for how that's going to work. So a lot of times how it works is, well, we're going to do these activities asynchronously, and we're going to deploy to production, but we're going to use release feature toggles. We're not going to turn those changes on for any customers until we've completed the testing that gives us confidence if we need to do exploratory testing or accessibility testing or user acceptance testing. A lot of different things we might need to do manually because either we haven't automated it yet or it can be automated. Does that make sense? Do y'all run into that same problem?
Yeah.
Okay, I know this is Dave. How many of you have read this book, Accelerate? I see one hand at least, and or have read the State of DevOps survey results reports.
Yeah, Fred.
Yep, I always check those out.
Yeah, Accelerate is just, it's a wonderful book. And it's even in an audio version that Nicole reads herself. It's really good. And one of the things that struck me, there's a section on test automation. And what really struck me was that they found that having reliable automated tests created and maintained by developers is a predictor of high-performing teams. Having automated tests created by an offshore test team is not a predictor of high-performing teams. Having them created by, I don't know, some poor tester who got stuck with the job and doesn't really have good coding skills and doesn't know how to design good, reliable tests, not a correlation factor. So it has to be owned by the developers. That means that they put a lot of love into those tests because they're relying on those tests for that feedback. And they have to investigate the failures. But another part of this, that's the part that's my favorite part, is that this is done along with testers. So the testers are helping with automation, and they're also doing a lot of manual activities like exploratory testing, user acceptance testing, just other forms of testing that need to be done in our manual. Those things are needed too, so it's all part of that continuous testing. And so there's a really great, I mean, I have the quote, I kind of carried the quote from the book around, there's a few paragraphs on it, but does this make sense to y'all?
Yeah.
How many of you are on teams where the developers create and maintain the tests?
And there are tests.
That look like a lot of people. And are your tests reliable?
No.
For the most part.
Always something.
Yeah, I think with the teams I'm working with right now, they're somewhat reliable, but they're definitely slower than they should be for the different layers of testing that you want to do. They've got too much up front, I think.
Gotcha. Well, we'll talk about that some more. And this goes along with the trend in the testing community, which is, you know, there are a lot of teams that have very few testers or they don't have any dedicated testers. But we know this testing needs to be done. And so, when on my last team, I was one of 2 testers for 30 developers. That doesn't really scale. I can't test all their work. So my role was really more of a test consultant. I'm helping them learn testing skills. I'm helping them learn how to do exploratory testing. I'm helping them make sure that we have the right automated test suites. And that's there's a podcast called A/B Testing with Alan Page and Brent Jensen, and they came up with these modern testing principles, which I find really interesting. And I do think that that's definitely the leading curve, but I think that's the direction that we're going with testing, especially given the testing in production and observability and all that. That we're more consultants to help the team build in quality and build in these testing activities along with development. Don't make them a separate phase. So if you look at moderntestingprinciples.org, learn more about that. So how many people have read this book?
Yeah.
I was a technical reviewer on this book back in the day. When they asked me to review it, I was like, my team does continuous delivery, but I don't really know. I don't feel like I'm an expert. And they're like, no, we really want you to review this. And I read the book, and it's about testing. It's just a book about testing to me. That's why I say testing is really the heart of continuous delivery. And I love the principles behind it. And to me, these are also the principles of DevOps. And that everybody is responsible. Everybody has to own quality. It doesn't work otherwise. I've actually known a team with no automated tests that successfully did continuous delivery. They delivered at least once a day to production. They're deployed once a day to production. Does anybody else know of a team like that? No automated tests, but they did CD?
We don't
It's
do,
pretty-
we don't do any automated tests right now, but we deploy once a week on various projects.
That's good.
Not
That's good.
once a day, but
But it's not a requirement, and they, they even say that continuous delivery. But my friend Ashley Hunsberger has a great analogy. She says, you can do it, but it's like driving at night without your headlights. It's possible to do it, but if you have headlights, it really reduces your risk. And so she thinks of one headlight as the automated regression test, and the other headlight is the production monitoring and observing. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, because if we don't have headlights, we have to go really slow. And if we just have one headlight, yeah, we'll go a little faster, but we still safer with two. So deployment pipelines are a way to get feedback. And as you all know, the earlier tests, they're faster, like code analysis unit tests, and that gives us fast feedback, which is great. We know right away if we've broken something obvious at that low level. And the later stages are slower feedback, so you're waiting longer for those. My last team, our pipeline took about 40 minutes, which I felt like was too long, but it was better than what we had before that. And but after 40 minutes, if everything passed, we felt pretty confident about deploying production. So we just want to always make those feedback loops as short as we can. So we're learning from what we've already deployed, and then we're building more in response to that. So now I want you all to do a little activity. And
Okay.
I'd like you to pair up with somebody, or if you're an odd number, we can do 3.
So I've got some paper here. I've got some markers here. So come grab just one sheet of paper, one marker, or?
Yeah, that's, what I want you to do is imagine that your team
Couple.
it's a bad production problem. And so you found it, you have a fix for it, you're ready to check that fix in. What all steps do you have to do to get that actually deployed to production? And so what I'd like you to do is draw that for each other, so draw your team's pipeline for your
One piece of paper per pair. So, yeah. All right, I can pair with you, Mark.
I don't know where to so you might have to have a 3 pair.
Yeah.
Wait. Let's see.
Do you want to come down and work with these guys real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Looks like you have this pair.
So you can visualize that, however it makes sense for you.
Well, Meg is going to work with him.
Alright.
All right.
We got 3 pairs.
Okay, how the team gets fixed to production?
I have some problem with the language because I
Draw.
the one.
Oh, that's
Okay.
I don't have
Okay, so I see it as typically
Alright.
we've
Well,
got,
your team gets sufficient
Mine
fixed
is
to
not.
production.
Mine is very.
depends on the situation. Let's say it's super urgent. So we'd figure out which version of the
Do you
software
have
was
experience with this?
deployed.
Yeah.
Create a branch
So what's your
from that,
how did your
fix
team get fixed?
the branch, and then
Okay, we
push it
Code
through
fix, I think.
the
Hmm?
normal
I think it's a code
pipeline.
fix.
Yeah. We design test.
So yeah, for the way we've got our stuff,
also
it's,
in the
you
deep
can,
server.
it uses master by
With
default.
pipeline there.
You can force it. You can just say, oh yeah, don't point at master right now.
Main test is
Super
about
urgent fixed branch.
The programmer
Yeah,
should test
it would still push it through.
in their local workstation
Thinking
before he deploys.
Now, obviously,
he
you
or
have
she
the
deploys.
situation that I'm imagining is you might break load requirements.
He deploys to the
For example,
server.
database migrations
There is
that
some
are now
guy
being
that
undone,
approves
losing
the
data or
or
something.
pull requests.
With prods, all you care about,
And
you push it through and you deal with the.
That
Are there any
is
tests that
after
would happen?
all the
Yeah, so we would have, so
pipeline test.
I assume I've got the branch already taken care of, so if you push.
So
you
So
need,
developer
unit tests.
commits.
This is different for different teams. There's not agreement as what a unit test is
we
versus
use
acceptance tests versus
GitLab server for that.
unit tests. Ideally, it's going to then go to the dev
Yeah.
deployment.
Yeah.
Some
Pipeline is here that's.
end-to-end tests.
Yeah. Test for
Yeah, it's
the
gonna go
code and documentation
to
many things.
Next environment. So
So
we'll just kind of fast forward to it's going to have to go to
but
staging,
mainly
which is our
we
production.
split
Uh-huh.
test
Then you would
to the
do
workstation and the different stage in the
testing
server.
there. If there's
These tests
performance
are
tests or
oriented to
anything
the
that
server
might
side,
happen,
and these tests are oriented
we're still
to the
working on that.
programmer.
And then you
And test the
prod,
the functionality is
at
intended
least smoke
to
tests, maybe some manual tests, depending on the job it is.
Basically, you have a version fix.
So that's kind of how I see it.
Test.
I do need another sheet. I can really big.
Well, for the time we have tests in all the packages. So if you make some orient fix,
They create a bullet
when you put the tests here, this fix
create a
fulfill the test we designed before the problem. Maybe the fit is orient and you don't decide to make one test for that solution.
So it's still on his
Okay,
machine.
that is really
There's a build server that does build and runs the test, but it's not the, so it
we
doesn't
have
build
to
and
test
it's,
the functionalities of
so
the user interface.
technically this does happen on another machine.
Doing
But
the-
yeah, we can do it locally to make sure you're not hitting egregious.
Then they can do, and they may do some manual testing if they need to.
honestly server and solution server. And every programmer have a server, a server.
If that passes, then they would do a deploy to the dev.
So all the tests can be made in every part, you know. But before we go to production, all the
At this point,
functionality.
either while the tests are running or beforehand,
So
manual testing.
that's mainly the
If there's also the live test. We don't have.
Basically, we make the task.
But it's down to zero.
When I said end-to-end,
Makes sense. Essentially,
Same agreement, yeah.
There's probably runs the test there.
it's kind of right
Very
there.
similar.
So it's-
and then
It's-
one person
I guess what I mean when I say
going
that
the
is
system,
It's definitely going beyond just modeling stuff.
Right.
Units.
detect problem.
Yeah, we need, they want less of this.
No, all is automated, but not the.
But we can't get by without this part usually. There's almost no.
There are some
deployment.
UI tests you can
Then it will go to
make
staging.
also. You can simulate
Which
some
runs the test again.
user input and something like that.
There's a slightly different setup in stage.
That is also,
Sometimes it's easier setting up.
that is very complex.
The test there, then we need more testing.
Yeah, we also are developing new
If we
similar
need to
complex
take
systems.
based testing. Then, when that's done, that's when we
Are in Python or make WAF open
So very, very similar.
Yep.
initial use system.
Now, we're talking about maybe doing it on.
Tester
Yeah, that's usually the right.
we split the
It's close enough.
but
We're at this stage, like I said,
we have
to the technical services.
layers.
When while I was there, they just set up their
consistent industry specific.
I've ever been involved with because we were doing performance testing.
Okay, every layer have
Okay, let's do a restore.
that's these layers.
They would
All the
say pause the
tests
live
can
feed
be
or whatever, and run a test on exact copy. Everything was exactly the same. Run load test, say, okay, I'm done. Go database restore and turn on the resync.
Okay, four layers are
Might have been around the same time that was first rolling out. I knew a guy
Yeah,
who was
to actually,
working for 7
it sounds like your organizations are pretty mature as far
Okay.
as testing.
And
yeah,
he was talking about
I am
something. Say what
I am
system
Cuban.
store.
So in Cuba, we don't have
I would say the hotfix
the
was
same infrastructure you have here.
So it would probably
So
go straight right to
there
master.
we have to develop the servers, all the cluster,
And some stuff.
we don't have.
Just magically make some stuff work.
Okay, we study everything
Having
Amazon.
performance tests here,
Everything.
having
There
more automation.
are local.
Usually once it's on master.
This server is local, this server is local.
There are.
So it's
We're doing everything in local servers,
This is what.
and we have to develop every layer of infrastructure.
Okay, how are y'all doing on time?
we're good.
Has everybody done their pipeline, or are you still drawing?
We're done.
Oh, you're done?
All right.
Okay. I couldn't tell, because you're still talking.
Good
So,
conversations.
Was it pretty easy? Did everybody know? I mean,
Okay.
you're in a DevOps
You
group,
can
so maybe
tell
that's,
them.
you
Yeah, I
know what your pipelines look like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was fairly easy. I mean, I had to kind of normalize some stuff because I deal with a lot of pipelines and some of them have slight variations, but for the most part, it's, you know, as you're writing it, you're embarrassed that, well, I really wish we had this type of thing here or that type of thing there, but we don't.
Do any of you have a different pipeline or different stages to get a hotfix out versus doing your regular deploy?
We had a couple
Yeah.
different changes,
Yeah, in my instance, the hotfix might go right to master instead of going in a feature branch, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Sometimes people skip some of the tests and stuff. Okay, well, good. Sounds like you were really good at doing that. Some people
Simplify.
don't know what their background looks like.
Run some tests in the workstation
And,
before
it's
we
just magic. So I like the process of drawing it out.
do the merge
So we're going to
request.
build on
Yeah.
that in terms of what you can do with an exercise like
Merge
this.
request or push request, whatever.
Any questions about it before we go on?
We
No,
run
sounds
some,
like you're pretty good.
we design some tests here,
So
and then one people from.
I often, usually I'm pairing with somebody else when I do this, but I often do workshops and tutorials at conferences where we visualize pipelines together, and of course, at a conference, you have to just make a pretend team. Like, okay, imagine you're a team at Spotify or whatever, and you had a bug of production. What did your pipeline look like to get the fix out? But doing this with your own team is really powerful. So getting everybody together and writing your pipeline steps on index cards or sticky notes and just laying them out on a table and then showing, okay, these ones are parallel and this one's dependent on that, and talking about them. And you can do this remotely too if you're on the distributed team. And again, don't forget the manual stages. So don't forget the exploratory testing. Don't forget the manual deploys. Don't forget user acceptance testing, anything that you have that's not automated. And just talk about it with your team. And so there are a lot of ways you can talk about it. Like you can go through and talk about, each stage of the pipeline. What unique value does this stage add? If it doesn't add unique value, maybe you don't need that stage. And then also another good exercise to do is from the time you commit to each stage, how long is that feedback loop? And do you see any ways to shorten it? And, obviously making things parallel can shorten it. There are other ways you can do it too. You can leverage cloud technology. I just read a case study about a team at Blackboard that took their UI tests that originally ran for hours. First, they implemented them on the cloud infrastructure with Amazon Web Services, and they first took it down to 39 minutes, and then it took it down to like 30 seconds. I mean, it was just some ridiculous amount. They took it down in a month. So we have technology now, like for UI tests, like Mabel, the tool that my company makes. You have your UI tests, and for each UI test that you have, all your UI tests actually, each one runs in its own container, and you can have multiple containers for all the different browsers. So you can run all your UI tests concurrently against all the browsers at once. And so your test suite that used to maybe take, 20 minutes to get through because you had IE, now is only as long as your longest test. So maybe it's going to be a couple minutes instead of 20 minutes. And there's a lot of tools, and you can do this yourself too. So there are just lots of opportunities to shorten these feedback loops. And then again, if you have manual steps, can you automate them? My team still has some tests that they are automated, but they're not in the CI. So the developers have to remember to run them locally before they check in. And it's easy to forget to do something like that, especially if you're dealing with a fix, you're in a hurry. So, is there better? Can you make more use of feature toggles to do some manual things asynchronously? So a lot of possibilities with this. And in my resources slide at the end, I have a link to a GitHub repo, I have a link to a Google Drive folder that has pre-printed cards for a bunch of different pipeline stages. So you can just print them off, so it saves you having to write it down, and do the exercise. So it can be done in under an hour. And if it's something that you can revisit periodically and say, okay, how's our pipeline work now? Does that sound like something you might try to do, or does anybody else already do this type of exercise?
I feel like the way that you visualized it exposed some things. One thing for the people I work with right now, I think another kind of little flavoring you can put to it is what environment things are happening in. I think it'll make it more obvious where I think they're experiencing some current collisions. Because it's neat to be able to use the cloud to be able to spin up tons of resources, to be able to try to parallelize things. I feel like a lot of times the problem that I'll hit is where the team isn't good at creating good test data, and so having a database to back the tests is always the bottleneck that I see in a lot of the situations.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. So let's focus on the automated test suites, since many of our stages are automated test suites of some kind. So this is another exercise you can do with your whole team. And if your team's too big, at least get a representational cross section of the team. Have different roles there, because different people are going to ask different questions, and that's really important. So this is something from Ashley Hunsberger called the Test Suite Canvas. And Ashley was inspired to create this by Katrina Clokey. Katrina has a really awesome book on Lean Code called A Practical Guide to Testing in DevOps. Has anyone read that one? Oh, yay, okay. And the idea behind the test suite canvas is you look at each one of your automated test suites, whether or not they're in your pipeline, and ask these questions about them. So, for example, what's the purpose of the test? What business question is it? Are we trying to answer with this suite, or what risk are we mitigating? And looking at your dependencies, your constraints, like if you have a bunch of parallel steps and one of them fails, does the next stage run, or you failed the whole pipeline? Those decisions that you have to make. But data is a big one. Do we mock things up? How do we manage the test setup? And contention on databases is a big thing. Like this one is our test lady because the one test says change the data that the other test expected to use. Do we have fixture data that we can refresh every time. Can each suite of tests run in its own little pristine environment? So really important questions. And maybe the most important question I say is engagement and failure response. If something fails, who's going to look at it? Who's going to be notified? How are they notified? How do you get an actionable alert? And a lot of teams suffer from alert fatigue because there are so many test failures because they're flaky, or just after a while they stop. Kind of, it's like, oh, that was just a flaky test. Just kick the pipeline off again. Anybody have alert fatigue in the room there? Or have your teams avoided that? My last team, we had big monitors on the wall with our production deploy pipeline, and we were deploying twice a week. And so on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, this pipeline kicked off, and if it failed, that monitor was up there all red and real obvious. But everybody was pair programming, so everybody kind of had their heads down working, and nobody even looked at the monitors. And so it might be an hour before somebody noticed that our 40-minute long pipeline just failed. And now it's kind of getting late in the day. If we kick it off again, we probably are not going to deploy today. That's a big deal. So we kind of got together and brainstormed, what do we do about this? How do we make ourselves notice? And we actually hooked a flashing police light up to our bill. So if anything in the deploy pipeline failed, the police light went off. And the only way to make it stop flashing was to take responsibility for investigating the problem and making sure it got fixed. You didn't have to fix it yourself, you had to make sure it would get fixed. So it's a pretty drastic measure, but we needed a drastic measure. And if that wouldn't have worked, we would have tried something else. I wanted to do something positive. I wanted to have a chocolate dispenser that would give you chocolate if you fixed the bill. But what I didn't win. Then maintainability, again, that state of DevOps finding that developers creating and maintaining the test was the key, because they're probably doing good practices with the test, and doing code reviews, or doing pair programming or TDD on the test, depending on how complicated the tests are. That's really important. And is the suite effective? What's it finding? If it's not very useful, or if it never fails, do we really need to keep it? So this is just a great way to have conversations about your different tests, or to identify gaps. Like I said, what tests might you be missing? Any questions about the test suite canvas? Does that look like something you might try as an experiment, maybe?
Looks pretty useful.
And I like little worksheets like this that you can actually print it out. All right. So, do you feel like you have adequate automated tests? And test coverage is such a mushy thing. The test coverage tools are not necessarily that useful. If you can identify gaps in your test, that could be helpful. But the main thing is, do you feel confident to be continually deploying these small changes out to production? Yeah, they're small changes, so they're less risky. And maybe if we are good at our production monitoring and observability, we can catch them really fast in production and fix them. That's fine too, depending on your business domain or your industry domain. But what makes you confident enough? So I think it's really important for teams to think about their test strategy. If we don't have adequate automated tests now, and maybe we don't have any automated tests now, we're still able to deploy once a week, but we want to deploy more often. How do we get started on our automated tests? That's a whole big topic and would be a whole nother session. But I would recommend looking into some of these visual models to help you talk about strategy. Yeah. Anybody here familiar with the test automation pyramid? Yeah, lots of hands. So that's a classic one from Mike Cohn. I worked for Mike Cohn when he invented that back in 2003, as a matter of fact. So I've been using that a long time. And basically the test automation pyramid is just trying to tell us, push as many tests down to where we can have really fast, easy to write tests. And we know we'll have to have more expensive tests, but let's try to have fewer of those. And I think one of the things that Richard Bradshaw recently put out a post that he feels that something that ought to be in the pyramid somewhere is our production code has to be testable. And a lot of the things that make tests, particularly UI tests, flaky, are just things that could have been prevented by writing the code differently and using better practices. And so that's really something, again, this is why the whole team has to do it. This is why the developers have to be involved in automated tests, because they're the ones writing the production code. And so they can fix that production code to be more testable. And yeah, as a tester, when I've been doing automation, there's a lot of times when I've been responsible for the UI automation because the developers just didn't want to do it. I could go to them and say, hey, you know, can you do this differently? Can you put unique identifiers on these elements? Can you do the JavaScript differently so that it's easier to test? And they'll do it. But if they're writing the test themselves, they're going to build it that way to start with. So I'm going to talk about, again, visual models. That'll be a whole session on its own, but we've got all kinds of models now. So we've got pyramids and triangles and bug filters and things that aren't shaped like this. Seb Rose took Mike Cohn's pyramid and so, you know, what it's basically trying to just tell you is have more tests that exercise less of the application. That makes sense. So that's one way to look at it. People tend to get hung up on the pyramid and say, oh, I have to have a certain number of tests here, or a certain percentage. No, that's not what it means. And then at Selenium conference last year, Aslan Hellside did a great keynote. And he talked about the love-hate relationship pyramid. I just love this. We have the tests that we love to write because they're fast and they give us fast feedback. And then we got these ones that maybe you go through more layers and we're not that happy with them. And then we've got these ones that go through all the layers and make us crazy. So I thought that's a great visualization. And then in Katrina's book, she has the DevOps test bug filter, I think is what it's called. So she adds to this, it's like, the unit tests catch the little bugs, and as we go wider, we catch the big bugs. And then, in production, we've got alerting, monitoring, and logging, and observability to help us catch those bugs. So, these are some of my favorite models. Anybody have questions about any of these models? Okay. And then there are, like I say, non-pyramid shaped models. This looks like a really fancy thing. It's from Rob Meany, who is the king of models. I just love his models. And it looks really sophisticated like this, but if you could have seen what he first wrote on a whiteboard, it didn't look like this. And that's what I would recommend. Start drawing on a whiteboard and thinking about things like risk. And his team uses risk to kind of drive all their decisions about testing and automation, operability. You know, I think it's a great way to look at it. And again, it's kind of a taxonomy. Each problem that you have, or each quality issue that you have, and see where does that fall. You know, is that a human thing? We need to do more exploratory testing than mine did. Or, you know, we are having trouble when our chaos engineering has shown that we have some trouble recovering from things in production. What can we do about that? So I think this is another really great model. Unfortunately, he has not written about this, but I have written about it. So if you're interested in knowing more about it, I can send you more information. But he has some great webinars on the Ministry of Testing site. And it's coming out with a book on testability that he's written with Ashwin. But remember, all models are wrong. Anybody heard this statement this credited to George Box, who was talking about it in statistical models. But it applies really to any model. So don't get too hung up on the model. If some model doesn't work for you, try a different one. Or just start drawing on the whiteboard. It's just a way to stimulate conversation and brainstorm ideas. And most importantly, design small experiments. So if you're having a problem, say, well, we don't have test automation to be able to release more frequently than once a week, but we want to release more often. So our hypothesis is if we did a automated suite of UI smoke tests that covered our most critical functionality that we're having to do manually now, that would reduce our production regression failures by 20% over the next month. Or it would give us time to learn how to write unit tests, because those are tests that we love to write. Whatever it is, just some kind of hypothesis that you can measure, and then you can see if it's progressing you toward your goal. And if it's not, try something else. So that's why I like the models, to just help design experiments. Any questions on models, or any favorite models y'all have?
No?
Nope.
No? Okay. So I'm going to talk a bit about getting the whole team engaged, because this has kind of been my thing for the last 20 years. That's what I loved about my first extreme programming team. Even when I was on waterfall teams, as a tester, I was on the testing team, but we got involved throughout the whole process. We went to the analysis meetings and requirements meetings and stuff, and we had automated deploys to production and all those good things. But I really love being on a cross-functional team where I'm actively working every day with developers, with other people in other roles on that team. And so it's out of a lot of people's comfort zone when they first start to do Agile or DevOps, and how do you get people to collaborate more? So going back to the State of DevOps report, science. I love it because it's science. And the Accelerate book explains all the science behind how they came up with the survey questions and processed the data. But they've always, every year it's shown that test automation has a significant impact on being able to do successful continuous delivery. But more recently, continuous testing has also been a key factor. And part of that is, early on, collaborating so we have a shared understanding of each feature and each story before we get started, so that we don't have a lot of rework and we save time. Continually improving our automated test suites, or adding to them. Everybody collaborating together. And then the fast feedback from automated tests. So this is all stuff from the State of DevOps report that rings true. And I've been lucky to be on a few high-performing teams, and this has been my experience as well. The ways testers can help and people in other roles is the collaborating for the shared understanding. So techniques like story mapping, example mapping, Three Amigos meetings. At my last team, we realized we had a problem because we thought we understood the stories, and we worked on them and tested them and delivered them, and the product owner was like, no, that isn't what I wanted at all. So that was really painful. So we were able to shorten our cycle time by doing example mapping so that we were all on the same page before we ever started to work on the story. We don't want to do too much up front, but just understand the business rules and have some examples to work with and get our questions answered. Teaching, I mentioned the idea of a tester as a consultant, just teaching other people how to test. So on my last team, I held exploratory testing workshops for the developers, and also paired with them, because we realized that when we didn't do enough exploratory testing, that's when we had the really bad regression failures in production. And we had thousands and thousands of automated regression tests. But these things were just cases that the regression tests couldn't find. We needed a human. And so by the developers getting some of these skills and then doing exploratory testing on the story level before they called any story done, that was how we could scale up exploratory testing with some future testers on the team. And then the testers could write exploratory testing charters at a feature level or an epic level, and then everybody in the team could get involved with that as well.
Can you define exploratory testing?
Oh, sure. Oh gosh, it's hard to define. So exploratory testing, some people think it's ad hoc testing, which is just like bang on the keyboard and do whatever you feel like doing. Exploratory testing is basically you start out with a mission. So Elizabeth Henderson has a really great book on it called Explore It, and she kind of likens it to when Lewis and Clark were sent out by President Jefferson to find the route to the Northwest Passage or whatever. He sent them out with a mission, like he wanted them to find the Northwest Passage, and he wanted them to learn about the Indians, and he wanted them to learn about the flora and fauna along the way, and he wanted a lot of stuff. And he gave him a lot of supplies. He gave him canoes, and he gave him tents, and he gave him, something to write with, and, whatever they used to study animals and plants at the time, and they had an interpreter to talk to the Native Americans. And so they have all these supplies. And so the idea with exploratory testing is you have some resources, you have a mission, something you want to learn about, but you want to time box it. So my exploratory test charters, I try to keep to about 30 minutes. And so it's something like, maybe I want to do some security testing. So I am going to try I'm going to try some particular format exploits on the profile page to make sure that it's not vulnerable to these format exploits. So a pretty specific set of format exploits that I'm going to do, which that's kind of more like test cases, but maybe I'm going to kind of expand on that. But I don't want to do too much. I'm not going to do the whole application at once. I'm just going to focus on one page or one area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then at the end, I'm going to report back to my team what I found. So it's kind of a debrief. It's like, okay, I did this security testing with cross-site scripting. First, I was focusing on cross-site scripting, and I did find that in this one element on the page, we do have a problem. And so I can report that, that's a bug. Or I can just say, hey, I did this and it looks great. So we have that confidence. It's kind of touchy-feely, it's learning about your product without following specific test cases.
Can I make a further distinction I think is relevant? Is if a test is something you can pre-specify, then you would automate it. Otherwise,
right.
You're exploring or doing more, critical thinking about how you're testing.
Yeah, that's a great way to distinguish it. Any other questions? Let's see. So other things that we have, DevOps is all about the infrastructure is code, and that code probably ought to be tested. So that's something testers can help with. Testers. I have a friend, Pete Whalen, and on his business card he has QA, and he says it stands for question asker. We can't really assure quality, but boy, we can ask questions. And that's a good thing, because we ask questions nobody else thought of. And especially asking questions that always happen in production. And so, my friend Abby Bates says that observability is the bridge to ops for testers. The way that monitoring was the bridge to ops for developers. Because observability, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a little bit like exploratory testing. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't set up an alert for something you don't know might happen. You can't really monitor for it. But you can instrument your code and have all the data out there so that you might notice a pattern in your metrics or in your analytics just realize there's a problem. And testers are really good at spotting those problems and identifying risks. Same for chaos engineering, because it's just a form of exploratory testing. You don't really know what's going to happen. And so this is someplace where testers can contribute. And that's why I'm so excited about DevOps. That's why I'm trying to learn about it. So again, we're trying to build a quality culture, and culture change is hard. We know that. So we learned a few years ago from that Google study that trust and psychological safety are prerequisites to high-performing teams. Joshua Karyevsky has his modern agile principles, and psychological safety is like the #1 deal. We've got to have that. We have to feel safe to fail. Otherwise, we won't try anything new, because we would be stupid to do that if we get in trouble, if we fail. And then the idea of the delivery team that created the product is also going to care for it in production. We're not throwing it over the wall anymore to the poor ops people, making them carry the picture. We're all working on this together. And Martin Fowler had an interesting blog post last week or week before on how you have to focus on quality to go faster. And I certainly live that with my teams. We make a big investment up front to say, okay, we want to deliver the best best code that we can, that we would be proud to take home and show our moms and put on our refrigerator. How do we do that? Well, let's see. Test-driven development is supposed to be a good way to do that. Pair programming is a good way. Refactoring is a good practice. Test automation is a good practice. So we have all these things, but they're hard to learn. And we need to spend time learning them. And if we're being driven to meet business deadlines to provide business value, we're not going to learn. We're going to cut corners. We're going to say, oh, well, let's put the test automation off to next sprint, or let's start doing test automation after our first big release. And that's when you start accumulating a lot of technical debt. It's just going to slow you down. So focusing on speed slows you down. Focusing on quality, as you get good at these practices and you're writing really good maintainable code, protected by automated tests, and at the same time, really important, you're learning the business domain. So that when the business comes to you, if we want this feature, you can say, oh, let's see, some of the things on this feature would be hard to do and expensive. But what if we did just this part of the feature? We can do that for you in half the time, half the cost. Is that good enough? It's usually good enough. So having that domain knowledge that we can do that for the customers is really key as well. And that takes time to acquire. You have to spend time sitting with your business stakeholders and sitting with your operations people, learning what they're doing. Now, Katrina, in her book, has a really good section on building relationships. And it's kind of the first thing in the book, I think, because the DevOps culture is all-inclusive of every role. And we're hoping that everybody's on one cross-functional team, but in big organizations, that's probably not the case. So you may need to get to know people outside your team. It's definitely out of our comfort zones. It's hard to go and talk to people you don't know, especially if you were used to working in a more siloed environment. But it's something we just need to work up our courage to do. One of the best things you can do is ask for help. It's actually a scientific fact that when somebody does something for you and you ask them for something and they do that for you, they then see you as a friend, and they will keep doing nice things for you because they did something nice for you already, so you must be a friend. So a lot of times I'll ask a developer, oh, can you come and draw the high-level system architecture for all us new people so we can understand it? Or, ask an operations specialist, can you come and explain the pipeline or explain the CI process or teach us how to use the CI tool? Asking people to come over and teach you something is a really great way to make friends as well and get help. And offer help, of course. Doing food. Y'all are doing food tonight. That's a very traditional thing to do. We're having a bug bash tomorrow, or I like to call them group hugs, where you get a lot of volunteers from the team together to do some exploratory testing on some new features that you're going to put out. And having food in those sessions is really useful. And all these things build trust. So it makes us feel safe. It makes us feel like if we disagree with something, we can bring it up, or if we have a question, we're not afraid to ask a question. I've actually been on such a dysfunctional team where I was told, I would then stand up and say, well, the test environment hasn't worked for 3 weeks and we haven't had a green build in 3 weeks, so I got nothing to test. And I was actually told to stop asking questions. So, you can't work in an environment like that. You need to feel safe to point things out. So I'll definitely share these slides with you, and I've got just a taster of some of my favorite resources to go to. Like I say, if you want to do the pipeline visualization and you want pre-printed cards, that's available. And then Ashley's testing canvas is available in her GitHub repo. And some recent blog posts I did about modeling your test automation strategy are in there. And Charity Major is kind of the go-to person for observability. She's Tipsy on Twitter. So just look for her stuff. And then I also really like these 3 posts by Cindy Sridharan, who's Copy Constructor on Twitter. Really good place. I didn't talk very much today about the operability side of things, which is also testing in production is a thing. Just because I didn't have time. I've already talked for an hour, which is more than I meant to. So there's my donkey march style, my gratuitous donkey picture. Does anybody else have questions or
I guess one thing that I was thinking of as we were doing this is I was thinking about how, and I think it's kind of the current context I'm in has caused me to hate a lot of UI tests because the way that they were implemented in this one context was that was the easy way to do some tests. And so they blow up very easy. And it's not that they're blowing up for no reason. It's just that it's very, very hard to find the reason, right? Because it's going across several systems. And so some people change something and this and that. And so I think it's not the existence of UI tests that I'm upset about. It's the fact that there aren't the unit tests underneath this, there aren't the contract tests underneath this. And so, but when it blows up, there's a lot of people kicking it around like, well, it's not the login system. No, we didn't change anything. No, it's got to be this other data API. No, it's not that. It's this other tertiary API, and and nobody's adding the unit tests underneath it, the contract tests underneath it. As I was thinking about that too, in the context of developers owning the tests, I wonder if there aren't ways to kind of have testing components for these larger regression suites. So for example, login, that's something that changed recently where I should have had an ID for where username was and password was, but instead people were using an XPath to find something that changed, right? And so I was kind of contemplating in my head, is there a world where you could have, the identity team, the login team creates a test component that says this is how you feed a username and password and click submit, and they maintain that with their code, and then it becomes like an NPM package or something that you can then use in your other test, your kind of bigger regression suite. Just something I was kind of thinking about.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
I don't know how it would play out, but it sounded interesting.
Well, and I think people get themselves into trouble, and often because the UI tests are being written by somebody who's not writing production code and maybe doesn't have the skills. But also a lot of times people's application, the data is kind of complicated, and so your test goes in and sets up this scenario, and it's like, oh, well, I've got all this data set up. I'm going to do these 100 tests because I've got the data set up. And then one of those tests fails, and now you got to dig around and figure out which test it was and why did it fail. And it might have failed for some tests that happened way up the chain. And so they're just these anti-patterns that people fall into. So yeah, there's a lot of pain to be had there. But it just followed the same good patterns and practices that you do for production code, and it usually pays off pretty well. And also just thinking about it, like Oslak's keynote at Selenium conference, he was showing that you can abstract things out on the UI level too. You can mock things out. You don't have to have every test of the UI go through all the layers. And in fact, my last team, we had a JavaScript single page app, and that was all written test driven. That was all unit tested with Jasper. So you can do it. But again, it's something you have to learn how to do, and you need the time to learn how to do it. And there's so many misguided company executives who are like, oh no, we believe in quality, but hurry up.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for cases where everybody is on the same page except for the management? Like some good book you could maybe recommend for managers to read? That
Honestly,
skips all the technical stuff and just focuses on the value you can get out of these things?
I think Accelerate is a great book to have them read because that's based on fact.
Yeah.
This is what makes teams successful, and it's a pretty easy read. The other ones I've found for executive level, Jess Humble and Gene Kim have a newer book that's designed for executives. I can't remember the name of it. But it's not the DevOps handbook, it's the one they wrote after that. But then they're like, we wrote a smaller book for the executives. But if you look at Jess Humble's on continuousdelivery.com, you can find it. So that's a good one. I find the Mary and Tom Poppendieck's Lean development books they're written from kind of a more business angle because it comes from manufacturing, I guess. And I found that executives, that speaks to them pretty well. We have to speak their language. We have to put it into, this is money. And it's not just what it's costing you to pay the team, but it's opportunity cost. You can get your feature out fast enough to production, your competition beat you, because your team is dealing with a legacy code base and it's too risky to make changes without doing a bunch of manual testing. That's an opportunity cost to the business. And you know, there are ways to explain that to them. I find technical debt they understand really well using that interest analogy of we're just paying interest. That's not good. That's not a good practice. So if we could put things into language that they understand, it helps. My team that I was on for almost 9 years at ePlan Services, we were able to, and that was a small company, so it was a lot easier to talk to the executives. But we explained technical debt to them, and we said, you know, as we're working and you want things delivered and we have to skip doing things we want, like, well, we really want to update our framework to the latest version or whatever, that's going to slow our velocity. And I don't really like velocity as a metric, but you know, if you're consistent on how you measure it, it's going to slow our velocity. You're going to see we're going to go slower, and our estimates won't be as predictable, and you won't know how long it'll take you to get the next new cool feature. And they understood that, and they could see the velocity numbers indicated that. And so every 6 months, we got 2 or 3 weeks of we don't have to deliver any business value. We can do refactoring. We can refactor our tests. We can upgrade our tools because we don't have to deliver any business value. And that really helped us manage our technical debt. And the business people totally understood it. And it's just 2 or 3 weeks, you know, nothing.
Anything else, anybody? Do you have any last thoughts?
I think it's just an exciting world. I'm super excited about observability and what we can learn from testing and production. But you know, the problem is that's dependent on having the solid, reliable tests and the quick pipeline, because if you're gonna catch problems in production, you gotta be able to fix them fast or revert fast. So if you're doing blue-green deploys and you catch things really fast after you deploy them, then that's easy to revert. That's mainly what my team at Mabel does. Is we just, at Mabel, the developers instrument every event in the system, and we use Segment to push that out to all of our metrics and analytics and monitoring tools. And so if either we notice a problem or a customer reports the problem, they can very quickly, within a few minutes, go and find that user in production and trace exactly what they did and see exactly what caused the error, and then they can reproduce the error, and they can either just revert the latest change, if that's possible, or get it fixed out. Because the data is all there. Whereas my last team, something like that would happen, and we'd go, oh, well, we didn't have any logging for that, because logging is expensive. So let's add some logging for the thing we think might have caused that. So we'll release that, now we'll look at the logs. Oh, that wasn't the right, it just slows you down so much. So having these modern tools that let you do that is super amazing.
What was that modern tool that gave you that traceability back to the user that you just mentioned?
Well, it's a lot of Google Stackdriver and Google Cloud Platform tools. But using Segment was what pushed it out. Sorry, analytics tool, you scared it out of me. Mixpanel. So a lot of it you can find some of that stuff. Mixpanel, BigQuery, we use BigQuery a lot. So, but Segment will let you take one event in the code and say what you want to capture about that information and send it to 20 different places. So it's pretty amazing. It's like science fiction to me. But conversely, it's kind of embarrassing. Don't say I said this, but the developers were writing. We we drink our own champagne. Our maple product is covered with maple tests. But I have found that despite what the state of DevOps says, developers don't always cover all of it. They kind of get stuck on the happy path, and they don't necessarily go off and say, well, what happened this negative thing happened, or somebody misbehaved. And so that's where you get a lot of problems. So when I joined Maple, I was a trial user of Maple last spring, a year ago, and I was just like, oh my God, this product is so funny. Because they were just relying on being able to find those problems in production and fix them fast, which was fine. And we totally hold the customer's hands. It's like, okay, we'll get that fixed right out. And we do get it fixed right out in 5 minutes, the problem's fixed. Woohoo! And so the customers aren't too unhappy. And we've gotten a lot better over the last year. But it is a problem. And so we're having a group hug tomorrow on some new features, because it's like, no, you know what, we're a startup, but we're not a brand new product anymore. It's not that we'll get something out to production and get feedback. We gotta get that system production. People have to rely on it because it's for their automated regression tests. So we have to pay more attention to that. So it's just like a spectrum, and you have to balance what can you do in production and respond to, and what do you need to do before you release.
Thanks.
But it's exciting that we have these different options.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'll send y'all, I'll upload the slides to Google Drive.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, for your time.
Have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
And feel free to get in touch anytime.
All right.